Profanity, sex, violence, and offensive humor. All of these are areas which might require toning down in order for a film to make it to release domestically, let alone overseas.
Most of the time when a film's being prepared for presentation outside its original country of release, it's subject to scrutiny by that country's censors.
But how often does a film's entire ending have to be changed to meet the same criteria?
Sometimes it also gets into the hands of another editor.
Sometimes a film's ending just is not upbeat enough to really sell to audiences. Or it might not be sad enough. The following films were either forced to change their conclusions, or had already shot multiple endings that were eventually watched in other countries. So potential spoilers lie ahead, of course, because I am Gareth.
I'm Jem from Whatculture.com.
And here are movies with different endings. Unfriended Dark Web. Although hardly a cinematic masterpiece, the sequel to 2014's Unfriended seems to have played a similar game to another entry on this list with releasing multiple endings all at once. Despite comments to the contrary from the film's director, theaters were sent two versions of Unfriended Dark Web, with specific locations being instructed to screen either version of the film. Projectionists in both Canada and the US confirmed this was true when the rumours began circling about multiple endings. The differences between the two endings are quite significant too. In one version, lead character Mateus is burned alive inside a coffin and tries to call his girlfriend Amaya. As she struggles to understand his predicament, the film just ends before we can learn his eventual fate. Drama. In the other released version, Erica wakes up alone in Mateus's apartment before discovering a hole in her skull, as you do. The film then cuts to a poll which votes for Mateus to die and sees him run over by a van, whilst the crimes of his murderers are pinned on him and Amaya. And whilst much bleaker, the latter ending seems to have been accepted as the definitive conclusion to the film. So there you go.
The Thief. The all but forgotten 1997 Venice Film Festival multi-prize winner and 1998 Academy Award nominee The Thief tells the story of Katya, who falls for Soviet soldier Tolyan. He turns out to be a career criminal, and Katya is torn between the dual realities of his violent nature and his new position as a father figure to her 6-year-old son, Sanya. Now, changing cultural artifacts to accommodate different political and cultural learnings has a long, storied history in Russia. Altering the conclusions of Hollywood films to align with the tastes of the Russian people was common practice before, during, and after the Soviet Union, and often meant foregoing happy endings altogether. On the flip side, however, the US distributors of The Thief made the director change his original The mood of the national community towards Russia was far from positive in the late 90s for how the country was conducting itself in the Chechen Wars. Thus, the decision was made that non-Russian audiences wouldn't appreciate a Russian director going anywhere near this subject.
The Descent. A claustrophobic and nightmarish survival horror. 2005 British film The Descent was a big success at the box office, and very well received by critics. It did pretty well. One of the best moments in the film comes from its twist ending, of course. Just as Sarah appears to have escaped from the clutches of the crawlers who've eaten all her friends, she wakes up back underground having dreamt the whole damn thing. As she sits in the darkness hallucinating, we hear the sound of approaching crawlers, and then the film just cuts to black, leaving it heavily implied that she never makes it out of the caves. Double A. But with the film's US release, a dramatic change was made to the ending in order to make it a bit less depressing for audiences. Instead of waking up in the cave, Sarah makes it out to a car and speeds off. As she drives away from the cave, Sarah begins to cry and leans out the window to be sick. But once she is back in the car, she sees a hallucination of Juno sitting next to her, and she screams, of course, before the film cuts to black. While still pretty jarring, it has got to be said that the US ending doesn't have anywhere near the same impact as the original shocking climax.
Lord of War. Long before the Nicolas Cage renaissance, before he nearly went bankrupt from buying mansions and dinosaurs and whatnot, and before he started putting his name to any production with a camera and a paycheck, he was a big Hollywood star. And back in his days of being a big bankable star, there was Lord of War, an underrated and overlooked film in Cage's career. The original ending for Lord of War sees Cage's arms dealer, Yuri Orlov, imprisoned before he escapes and ultimately returns to his far from savoury, precious engagements, despite having lost almost everything in his life. In China, however, Yuri never again sees the light of day. Censors cut the final 30 minutes of the film in their entirety and replaced this sequence with text stating that Yuri confessed to his crimes and he was sent away for life. The thing is, social conditioning is kind of a big thing in China. The state relies on its ability to control the population, and so the China Film Administration censors all entertainment media in an effort to ensure nobody gets any revolutionary, law-breaking ideas, from Nicolas Cage or anyone else for that matter. The Grandmaster. Wong Kar-wai is widely regarded as one of the greatest writer-directors of past 4 decades, and his much sought-after movies are made all the more valuable by relative difficulty of obtaining them, with most of his titles not receiving any cinematic releases in Western countries and physical media being historically hard to come by. Thus, the arrival of his martial arts drama The Grandmaster to US screens in 2013 was something of an event. Unfortunately, the film's release saw drastic changes made to the original cut, led by Harvey Weinstein. Unlike many of his other massacres, however, Weinstein dissected Wong's kung fu drama with not only the director's permission, but his assistance in the editing suite. Among the many additions, removals, and edits is a refocusing of the film's ending, clearly in the hope that a more direct and extended helping of a cultural icon, Bruce Lee, would get America's audiences on side. This ending focuses more on a young Lee, the most famous student of the film's subject, the Grandmaster, and includes amongst other things additional shots of the young martial artist and a dramatic title card announcing who he is. This did not go down well, and the US version of Grandmaster is regarded as considerably inferior to the original, Pride and Prejudice. Regarded by many as a definitive film version of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, despite Pride and Prejudice and zombies being right there, Joe Wright's 2005 adaptation greatly expanded the profile of stars Keira Knightley as Elizabeth Bennet and Matthew Macfadyen as Mr. Darcy, and introduced Austen's work to a whole new generation. And while the die-hard Austen fans throughout the world agree that the UK version of the film handles the source material with reverence and tact, the same cannot be said of the American version. Prior to its North American release, Pride and Prejudice was altered to include a scene that was scrapped from the first cut, and which goes beyond the ending of the novel. This shows a married Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy at Pemberley kissing and being soppy and such like, replacing the ending where Mr. Bennet, who is a truly wonderful Donald Sutherland, gives the couple his blessing and chuckles away to himself. Well, the aim was obviously to try and appeal to those US audiences who prefer sentimentality over nuance, but it did not work. It became a matter of some distress and urgency for the Jane Austen Society of North America, who reprimanded the scene's inconsistency with the film's established tone and narrative thrust. Gosh.
Bandersnatch. Whilst this might seem like a cheat, given Bandersnatch is an interactive film with preset endings discoverable for just about anyone who watches it, just hear me out. Bandersnatch can be viewed as a mass social experiment that addresses its audience's choices. Rightly or wrongly, that is exactly what Netflix did with the data gathered from the film's release on the streaming platform. There are multiple endings to Bandersnatch, but depending on what choices you make during your viewing experience, this obviously affects the ending that you're gonna see. Interestingly enough, some of the data that Netflix has shared revealed that where you live could actually prove a factor in that. Whilst some of the choices you make whilst watching might appear trivial, they do vary from country to country. For instance, 60% of all users chose Frosties over Sugar Puffs for Stefan's breakfast. Obviously, this is down to brand familiarity amongst a global audience, but when given the choice between chucking a cup of tea or coffee, 52% of viewers in Britain and Ireland could not stand wasting a good cup of cha, whilst 55% of the rest of the world could. Now, while these are certainly more trivial choices, they do all still add up to whatever ending you get at the end of Bandersnatch, and depending on how strongly indented in your domestic culture you are, this can ultimately play a part in what ending you see. Very interesting.
Minions: The Rise of Gru. It will come as no surprise that the aforementioned China Film Administration has had its hands all over a large number of popular Western movies whose narratives go against their established rules and values. What may come as a surprise, though, is that one of the movies in question is Despicable Me spin-off sequel, Minions: The Rise of Gru. We know that the Chinese censors like to see any film involving renegades, rogues, rebels, or rapscallions end in a serious helping of justice in order to uphold a society based on the strict implementation of law and order. And while the banana-wielding minions aren't exactly the James Younger gang, they are the antithesis of order and sensibility. accidentally causing the wreck and ruin of almost everything they come into contact with, yet somehow successfully piloting a commercial flight to San Francisco, may I add. Plus, the original ending of Minions: The Rise of Gru, which sees a miniature Gru, his minions, and his mentor escape any kind of punishment for the chaos they have overseen and drive off into the sunset, was nixed for the Chinese market. Instead, the gang fails in their escape, and Gru's mentor, a master criminal and ex-member of the Vicious Six, is locked up for good. Let us know in the comments what you think of these endings being changed, and while you're there, drop us a cheeky like, share, and subscribe too.
Brazil. A film as bizarrely brilliant as Brazil had an equally bizarre history behind the struggle to release it with its original ending intact. 20th Century Fox had already given the green light for the worldwide release of director Terry Gilliam's film in February of 1985. But Brazil was tinkered with by US distributors Universal Pictures to make its ending more upbeat for American audiences. Americans just needed that positivity in their lives apparently. Gilliam discovered another team of editors working secretly on releasing a different version of the film. How rude. He confronted Universal about this but didn't get anywhere with them. The dispute went on for months, prompting a frustrated Gilliam to take out an ad in Variety, imploring Universal to release the film. A version where Sam and Jill inexplicably escape captivity and fly off into the clouds was screened multiple times for test audiences and film schools. But when Brazil won an LA Film Critics Award for Best Film, Universal agreed to work with Gilliam and released a version of the film that kept his ending. Now, the upbeat ending of the film was never actually released in cinemas, but still occasionally pops up on some television versions of the film in different parts of the world. How weird.
King Kong vs Godzilla. Long before Godzilla and Kong romped around Hong Kong and came away pals in their CGI-laden 2021 hit, they went toe-to-toe at the summit of Mount Fuji in King Kong vs Godzilla. The film's ending sees this clash of titans end underwater, with Kong emerging victorious and Godzilla presumed dead. And while there was a change to this ending for the US market, it's not what everyone thinks. There are in fact two small differences in the endings of the Western and Asian releases of King Kong vs Godzilla. In the US release, Kong rules on his own during the film's pre-credits fade to black, while in the Japanese release, both Godzilla and King Kong's roars are heard. A marginal difference maybe, but it really has made waves in the years since.
The Big Blue. The ending to 1988 French-English diving adventure The Big Blue was considered either too ambiguous or downbeat by US distributor Columbia Pictures. In the original, Jacques Mayol is seen drifting down into the depths of the sea when he spots a dolphin. In a dreamlike sequence, Mayol follows the dolphin into the murky depths, and the film ends there, heavily implying that he dies down in the underwater depths he so loves. On the back of him being told by his lover that she is expecting his child, the obviously suicidal actions of Mayol were apparently too much for an American audience to handle. As such, the ending was changed so that Mayol swims away with the dolphin, but returns to the surface afterwards, providing a more optimistic conclusion than that of the original. The film is a cult classic of late 80s European cinema, and the altered ending doesn't really fit the mold for the film's central focus of love for the ocean. But like so many other entries on this list, American distributors were more concerned about good vibrations at the end of a film, rather than poignant storytelling.
The Sound of Music. Receiving critical acclaim on both sides of the pond, The Sound of Music rapidly entered the halls of cinema as a stone-cold classic, except in Germany. Part of Germany's rather effective, decades-long strategy following the atrocities of World War II has been to ban Nazi iconography wherever possible. Unfortunately for The Sound of Music, which focuses on how Julie Andrews helps the troupe of all singing, all dancing children she cares for escape the Third Reich, this meant heavy editing. 20th Century Fox's Munich branch led a massive re-edit of the ending for German audiences, removing the bulk of the film's third act for this niche market, despite not being authorized by Fox in the US. Needless to say, it did not pay off, and the film was rendered thematically nonsensical, but even after the studio reinstated the original ending, the film still bombed at the box office.
28 days later. Our last entry is a rather bizarre one, primarily because of a post-credits scene which changed the film's ending. 28 Days Later is one of the greatest zombie horror films of all time, but test audiences reacted badly to the original, far bleaker ending, as director Danny Boyle revealed in an interview after the film's release. So naturally, they changed it to the slightly more upbeat ending seen in the theatrical release. In a pretty rare move, audiences in America didn't think that the ending was dark enough though. I know, I'm stunned. Whilst it did leave the window open for the remaining characters to survive, American audiences apparently wanted more closure behind the fate of Jim and company. So one of 3 alternate endings which were shot was added onto the end of the film's credits. US audiences saw the one where Jim dies on a hospital bed whilst being treated for his wounds he sustained before the film's original ending. Cheerful stuff. Weirdly, the film wasn't actually released in the US until nearly 8 months after the original release. I mean, surely it would have made sense this one time to change the ending of the film rather than tack the post-credits ending on at the end as an afterthought. It was a bit weird, but yep, it was too late now, I guess.
Fight Club. Fincher's film takes aim at consumerism, corporate culture, and individualism, and so was not necessarily a sure target for the China Film Association, as arguably represents many of the values that created the People's Republic in the first place. However, the film's dalliance with a new kind of anarchic collectivism was bound to rankle with the country's typically overbearing government. The people can have their communism, just not like that. Championing civil disobedience at every turn, Fight Club offers viewers an alternative to the neoliberal world that the West pioneered, with the ending seeing Tyler Durden, played by Pitt, and the narrator, Norton, bring the entire system to a grinding halt, raising LA scrapers, destroying the nation's digital capital, and sending everyone back to zero. The Chinese government, of course, could not let this go unchallenged. Thus, they recut the ending to remove the onset of total societal reset and replaced it with a black title stating that the police rapidly figured out the whole plan and arrested all criminals, successfully preventing the bomb from exploding. Monty Python could not have done better themselves.